Most people think being the first researcher or the first designer on a team means that you finally get to do it all your way. But the reality hits fast. You're not just collecting insights or designing wireframes, you're building the pipes, you're selling the value, you're negotiating the budget, you're managing up, and somehow keeping everybody aligned, all while trying not to become the bottleneck yourself. It's less do the work yourself and more create a culture from scratch. So if you've ever wondered what it really takes to build a design or research practice when you're the only one in the room, stick around because this episode is going to change the way you think about your job. I am so excited to have my good buddy Julian Della Mattia on the show today. Julian has spent his entire career stepping into one of the toughest roles in UX, being one of the first researchers inside an organization. And over the years, he's mastered the craft of building research practices from the ground up, helping teams move beyond ad hoc insights and towards scalable, meaningful learning. He specializes in everything early researchers need to make research stick, earning stakeholder buy-in, proving the value of user insights, delivering high-quality research that actually drives decisions, and building the infrastructure organizations rely on to understand their users, their problems, and their market. Julian's also the host of Finders to Builders, a podcast for first and solo researchers navigating the unique challenges of establishing a research practice from scratch. And Julian, we are going to have you on the show today on the other side of the mic. You are on the receiving end of the questions today, and I am so excited to have you on. So I know I read your bio a little bit, dude, but welcome to the show. Tell us a little bit about you, and ultimately, man, how did you get to realize how navigating that solo gig is a lot different from being on a large team?
First of all, thank you, Jeremy, for having me. Love to be here. Been a fan of the show for quite some time now. I'm happy to be on the other side of the mic, or the other mic. When I got this first in-house role, I started noticing that I needed to build something else. And this scenario started happening. First time was by chance. The second time, we can still call it chance. But the third time it happens, it's not by chance anymore. There's something I'm unconsciously choosing here. Building a brand around building practices. It sounds like a bit meta, right? But that's how I got here. And now I'm back in-house. I'm currently working at DuckDuckGo just because I wanted to move away from that for a bit. I wanted to have a different challenge. But I'm still super passionate about building the pipes and the infrastructure and building the engine itself and how it should work, right?
Before we kick that off, what does Finder to Builder actually mean to you?
Okay, this is very applied to researchers, but I think some design folks can relate. I'm gonna try and also use as many generic examples as we can, because I think in the end designers and researchers are like brothers and we have slightly different mindsets and slightly different skill sets, but I think we're very much alike in how we think and how we approach stuff. But the Finders to Builders thing came because as researchers, when we go into a company or when we approach a project, we get into this finder mentality, right? It's like you join a company, I'm the researcher now, I would bring you the insights just like a hound. I'll just go and look for stuff and I'm gonna find stuff out for you and great, but that's in one direction, right? But if you want research to actually succeed, you need to kind of have a broader surface of impact, because otherwise it's just, especially if you're alone, you just kind of go and dig deep into this and then come back. It's like you need to build something that's scalable and where you can replicate and multiply your impact. It's not just about having more researchers only, but it's also about, especially when you are limited with resources, how can you replicate the presence or the knowledge a researcher brings to the table in a way that everybody can process and can leverage to make better decisions. So that's pretty much the idea. So instead of becoming just a finder, the person who just go, and it's totally fair if that's what you like and that's what you do, totally respect that. But it's not just the one bringing the insights, but also the one saying, my role is not just to find stuff out. My role is to help the whole company make better decisions based on data, based on insights. So how can I enable the organization how can I help the organization to learn more and better? Because the more we know, the better decisions we'll make, and the better our products, the better our services are in the end. I can allocate some time to research, right? To find out stuff. But then 75% or 70% of real should be about the rest, right? Talking to other people, managing expectations, also telling what parts of research can I rely on designers, on PMs to get, right? It's not only you, it's everybody should be doing that. There's this, I think it was the UK government at some point used something like research is a team sport or something like that. And I think it's a team sport that should be led by a researcher. That's the one addition that I make. But in the end, if we all together as an organization start incorporating this into our mindset and into our operations, the better off we are. The researchers are the one enabling that, right? It's like, it's same with design. It's like, yeah, you can go and you can be great at your craft and you can be the best designer, but then in the end, it's like, there's so many things that need to happen. It's like, are you in sync with development? Are you in sync with product? Are you creating components that are scalable later on? Do you have a design system? Do you have all these things in the end? It's like kind of the same idea, right? A good analogy that could work here is, imagine you're really good at cooking at home. That's great. You're top notch. But running a restaurant is a different thing, right? You need to have to make shifts and you need to buy materials and you need to take care of the customers. It's very different. The craft and the whole service is a whole different ball game, right?
As the first designer, sole designer, researcher, founding, whatever, what are the things that are invisible that you might not have ever realized you even had to do? Because we could be strategic and think about the things we need to do, but if we don't know what those things are, you can't plan for them. So what are the things that someone might not even expect, but is absolutely critical to success?
That's a really good one, and it connects perfectly to the last bit of the last topic, right? I learned all that the hard way, right? It's like sometimes you just overestimate some stuff and underestimate others, and then somebody's like, whoa. The first time I was the first researcher, I had a very different approach than the third or the fourth. The second time was different than the third time. It's like completely different, and also matured as a researcher. So when you are the first one and you are the junior, which can happen, you need to tread carefully there, right? And there, going to your point, is that the question is, okay, what needs to happen in the organization for us to learn more and better? And then how do people perceive the work that I do, of the output they get from me, and what do they need? How do they consume it? And part of the things people miss right away is like understanding. We spend a lot of time understanding our users, understanding the end user and the customers, and which is great, of course. You should always do that, by the way. But we don't spend enough time researching or understanding our surroundings, and that's a lot of work.
Yeah,
Understanding our work and building bridges. So those are two things. It's not only understanding, but also, okay, how can we create the right dynamics between us? So that there are different layers there, right? And this affects how you communicate, how you deliver your stuff, who you deliver it to, how you present stuff, what level of information do they need or not, and what do they expect, and what kind of things are keeping these people awake at night, right? The CPO, she's awake, she's struggling to sleep because she's worried about, I don't know, churn. And there's all these things is something that you won't expect right away, because we get a request and someone already has an idea of where we want to take this, but at some point, like, there's so many layers to it. It's just not the output itself, but also how it connects, because in the end it's all about humans, right? We are just like a bunch of flesh bobs trying to get something done and get together and align, and you need to orchestrate different interests and different mindsets. So understanding that is crucial and is sometimes like completely overlooked.
When it comes to being a solo designer, you probably don't have a designer or researcher as a manager, so you're working and dealing with somebody else who doesn't understand your job necessarily. How do you manage up? How do you get that person above you to get their boss to care about the things that you care about?
That's a really good question.
Dude, I got so many.
I know, that's why I'm here. That's a different challenge, is when you have someone who's not fully, I don't want to use the word knowledgeable, but maybe I can borrow it for this answer. Like someone comes from a different background and has maybe manages different roles. We have maybe a VP of product who manages design, product, and research is there. And maybe they are not super into research, they don't know the nitty gritty. I think but it's also connected to what I said before. It's like understanding what should you communicate to them and what matters to them. And I pled guilty. It took me years to have this mindset shift, but at some point I share what got me excited as a researcher, and I noticed that the things that got me excited as a researcher only excited other researchers. And probably happens the same in design. It's like, whoa, look at this, whatever thing that I put together. It's great, and someone else comes, okay, cool. So my point here is you should understand or be mindful of what kind of information matters to people above you. What do they care about? And how can you connect your work to that? So if let's imagine 2 levels up, like the CPO, she's worried about retention. And then this cascades to your head of UX. So retention is a big issue. And then at some point, I'm helping with my work as a designer or as a researcher. I'm helping tackle, this will help us with retention, because of this and that. You don't need to say, I need to do surveys because of whatever it is. Yeah, great. That's the how, and we can get into the how. But just like being mindful of how you connect your work to that. At some point, I think we lose sight of the business, and I think it's not just we could probably do another episode just on this bit, which is sometimes as in people in UX we focus too much on the user, and we kind of like we carry the flag of we bring the user into the equation, the user's voice and whatever. But at some point, it's like our job is also to balance between the user and the business. I would think of the great Joe Natoli when I think about it. Right? Okay, we have two things, and we need to create a bridge there. So how can we build a sustainable business around something that the user values, right? So when you think about it that way, you start thinking of the business, and when you think of the business, you also start thinking how different levels of the organization care or see stuff. And that's how I recommend managing apps. If you have a manager who's maybe not a specialist in your area or not a specialist in your craft, okay, what matters to them? It's like you probably need to have a different level of seniority to have this conversation. That we agree. Like probably a junior researcher would benefit from having someone who's, I think the layout here, the law of proximity and whatever. I mean, that they could benefit from that. Same as a researcher, if you have a manager who's, I think you had like double-barreled questions here, or you're by whatever, they can benefit from that. But when you have another role, it's like, okay, how do you connect your work to the bigger picture? And that's how we recommend managing it. Because in the end, the higher you go, the more big picture thinking you will face. And you don't have time to go about like the whole research or craft story, right? There's this thing in German that is like the higher you go, the thinner the air is, like there's less air, so just use it wisely. So if you need to manage apps, like what do you need to communicate to these stakeholders?
We've had you for a really long time now. We've both got jobs and we got to get back to it at some point. Before we get out of here, man, anything else that we didn't cover that you think is just incredibly critical for those people who are thinking about taking a role as a solo researcher designer, or somebody who has just started and is flailing around, not sure what to do? Closing advice, parting advice, anything else we didn't talk about that you think is critical for them to know?
Okay, if you're thinking of being the first UXer, could be a designer, researcher, even content designer, or even UX writer, because I think it applies to all the roles. If you're the first one, you should be aware that there's part of your time that will be dedicated to the actual craft, but then there's a lot that is going to be around everything else. In the case of research, it's like you will spend a long time or a lot of your time doing everything around the research, and then just a little bit of time with the research. And it's good to get this right from the start, because if you do it the other way around, I'm not saying you won't be successful or that you won't succeed in your role, but your chances are it's going to get harder. Yeah, let's put it that way. If you think that if you're the only one in the first one, that you can just put your head down and do the work, and that's because you're passionate about it and so on, probably you could benefit from a different environment. Because if you are the first one or the solo, first, you're going to be pulled in different directions. Second, you're going to talk to a lot of people who don't get what you do. Then you won't have the tools or the infrastructure to support your work and to make your work scalable and faster and efficient. So you need to do all these things. The people work and the infrastructure work, and then the actual craft work. So these are the three layers that you will work with, and usually the other two are larger at some point and will take a larger amount of your time than the craft itself. It is what it is. It's a beautiful challenge. It's an amazing challenge if you have that type of personality and you have this kind of also entrepreneurial gene in you. Like, you need to get stuff done. I need to be resourceful. I don't have budget. I don't have time. I don't have people. It's like you need to create the magic. If you have that, this role is gonna be like a wonderful adventure.